Hey my friends, what is up? Thanks for tuning back into my channel. My name is Jocelyn. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about biology and how this kind of moves up the next phase of evolution to the cells. We're going to be diving into all this information and of course relating it to law of attraction. What are the similarities here, especially when we're diving into what's this combination? How does law of attraction really work inside of the body? What's going on internally? So that's what we're going to be diving into today. We're going to go over kind of like the evolutionary growth like I've talked about in my other videos, but this time we're going to dive a little bit more in detail as far as amino acids and proteins and cells and what goes on internally down at that cellular level to assist law of attraction. What's really going on down at that level? You know, the atoms come together and they create molecules. Molecules come together and when we're talking about the body internally, molecules will come together and they create amino acids. Amino acids will come together and they create proteins. Proteins come together to create cells, and then cells come together to create tissues and organs, and then of course that turns into a human like you or I. Now, let's talk about first of all amino acids. That's where I want to start off with. So I talked about how molecules turn into amino acids, and there are 20 amino acids that we as humans need for our survival because they're what make proteins in the body, and the majority of our body is made up of proteins. All of our cells in our body are made of proteins. So let's talk about the 20 amino acids, okay? Our body produces the majority of them, but 9, and it's called the 9 essential amino acids, we get from food. This is why the foods that we eat are so important. It's extremely important what you're ingesting, what you're taking into your body. So amino acids. So we know 9 of them come from food. Now where did the other ones come from? Like I said, our body can produce the other ones. Brain chemicals are actually made of amino acids. So we know that we get all the amino acids that we need, the 9 essential from food, and our brain chemicals make up a combination of the other amino acids that are in our body. Our brain chemicals are produced in the hypothalamus, so they're made up of those amino acids, and then they travel to the rest of our body, to the cells. Now what happens inside the cell? Let's talk about that in detail. We know kind of back when we learned in elementary, or probably more like junior high school, but we learned about a cell and the structure of a cell. We know that a cell has a nucleus, and the nucleus contains our DNA, and we know that the DNA is kind of like the blueprint or the recipe to make up the rest of our body. It's what makes more cells in the body. It's kind of what combines all these amino acids to produce even more cells. Let's dive briefly into the process, how DNA combines with amino acids to produce more cells. So like I said, the DNA is contained inside of the nucleus. And what will happen is the DNA will kind of split off smaller portions of itself called messenger RNA, which will exit the nucleus. And the messenger RNA will combine with a ribosome that is located in the cell. And then the amino acids that are coming from outside of the cell will come inside of the cell and combine with the ribosome and the messenger RNA. And this is how more proteins will come together, because the messenger RNA will tell the ribosome how it needs to construct and arrange all the amino acids to turn it into really specific proteins for specific parts of the body. Okay, so it's a really detailed process, but I just wanted to give you that general overview so you really get the importance of amino acids inside of us. So let's talk about the next phase up. How do amino acids get into the cell? On the outside of our cells in our body, and we have about 37.2 trillion cells that are located in your body, and that's just about on average. Your brain chemicals or any real type of chemical will dock onto the cell and dock onto what is called a receptor. Now, there can be about 1,000 to millions of receptors on the outside of each individual cell. And like I said, these receptors are like little docking stations for information to get inside of the cell. Now, the really important thing about these receptors is that there is a very specific receptor for each chemical that we bring into our body. So there's a very specific receptor for dopamine. There's a very specific receptor just for serotonin, and a very specific receptor just for cortisol, the stress brain chemical. When you're thinking that excess amount of stressful thoughts, that means that your hypothalamus, your brain, is going to be producing an excess amount of cortisol. So when that excess amount of cortisol is going to the rest of your body, the cells, the way that they try to keep up with all of the cortisol that you're putting in your body is they will have to produce even more cortisol receptors to take on all of that incoming amount that you're putting into the cell. So that part right there is key. That I want you to really remember, because you know how in the spiritual world we talk about how there's stuck energy in the body, and it means that your cells are literally addicted to the excess chemical that you're putting into the body. This is how addiction starts at the core of us. It doesn't just have to be a drug or a food or caffeine or any of those things. We become addicted to thoughts. We become addicted to brain chemicals, and specifically stressful cortisol-based thoughts. So when we say there's stuck energy in the body, it's literally because in your cells you have an excess amount of receptors that are just for cortisol, that are just able to take on the chemical cortisol to enter into the cell because you're addicted. We'll talk about later how you can become unaddicted, how you get rid of that excess amount of energy or that stressful energy that's stored within your cells. That's why I wanted to touch base on this, because when we talk about how these thoughts and beliefs that we pick up from our parents, these self-limiting beliefs, these negative things, and no offense to them because they learned it from their parents and so on and so forth, but that's how we become addicted to thoughts in the first place. So this is why it's so key, the thoughts that you think, and not only the thoughts that you think, but the food that you're putting into your body. The combination of both is going to provide a healthy energy that's put into your body. So now that we've gone over that basic information, all of that structure of the cell, everything like that, I want to talk about DNA kind of in a different light. So your DNA is where your karma is stored. It is literally the information that has been passed down by our ancestors, and it is stored in the DNA. Now, obviously, like, this is my take on what DNA is, and I'm going to explain it further in the rest of the videos to really make sense why your karma is literally stored in the DNA. It will get much more complex, and I promise we'll spin back around to that information, but I want you to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that karma is actually stored in your DNA. When people talk about that we bring in karma from past lives, it's not true at all. We already have enough karma from our own family line that's stored within our DNA to handle just in this lifetime. So if you're stressed about, oh my gosh, like maybe I really screwed up in a past life, or you know, I've really pissed off some people in past lives and lived horrible lives, no. Don't even worry about that. All you have to focus on is this lifetime and the karma that's surrounding the ancestral line that you're born into, because that's stored within your DNA. And like I said, I will dive much more in depth into that when we go on throughout the videos. All of this will make so much more sense. But so as I talked about in the last video, maybe a way that we were brought up, you know, if we had stressful environments growing up, or maybe we were raised in an abusive environment, or, you know, had any type of real stress factors or trauma in our environment. So the combination between the memory that's stored in the neural net in our brain and the combination of brain chemicals you had released when you were a child and stored within the cells of your body is what is going to create the experiences that you go throughout life as you get older. So if you had an extremely something traumatic happen when you were younger, something that caused, and this can be anything. If you really think about that, stress and the cortisol-based brain chemical is going to be linked with stressful things in our environment, then pretty much any type of trauma, any type of stress is going to create a release from your brain of that brain chemical cortisol into the cells. Now, even more, if you have a stressful environment on a day-to-day basis, then that's even more cortisol that's going to be created in a child's brain, passed down to the cells of their body, and that's going to be even more stress cortisol-based receptors that have been created on their cells. Because remember, the cell will create more and more receptors to take on the excess amount of brain chemical that we are putting into our body. So this, at the core, is law of attraction. So when you are vibrating at the core of you like a cortisol-based cell, if the cells in your body are more cortisol-based because they have an excess amount of receptors that only take on the cortisol brain chemical, then that is literally the energy that you're going to be putting out into your environment, into the universe. And this is why you will attract those same type of situations. It's not for any other reason other than to wake you up to those chemicals that are stored within the cells of your body. That's the only purpose. So you keep putting this energy out into the environment, okay? Say you have cortisol-based cells. So you keep putting this cortisol type of energy out into the universe. What will happen is you will not only keep attracting those experiences to trigger that brain chemical, because what you put out there, you get back, but the more that you put a halt at your own evolution as a vibrational being and you don't take care of those, but we do continue to attract the same situations that we were raised with. And the more time that goes on that these lower vibrational emotions are suppressed within the cells of our body, we go through this cycle where we keep attracting more and more things that will trigger those low vibrational emotions to wake us up. But if you're not waking up and it's becoming even more suppressed, you're creating even more cortisol-based chemicals and it's going into the cells, the situations that you attract will become more and more painful as time goes along. That's why if you can look back over your life and if you're able to see a pattern of pain within your life, that why does this keep happening? That this person hurts me, and you can kind of see a similarity between the painful situations. The people might be different. The details of the situations and the people might be different. Like, oh yeah, this guy had a different appearance than the guy before, or girl, whichever. But if you look at the emotions, the emotional patterns will be the same. This is why we go through these patterns in life, is that it's triggering these emotions within our cells so that we can awaken and really confront those situations and turn them into positive. You have to learn to dissociate and disidentify from these painful situations to really be able to transcend and evolve from that. That is part of the evolution and the waking up of our quantum physical soul. I hope all of this is making sense so far. Message me if you have any questions at all. But I really hope you guys are enjoying the information. And the next video, we're really going to be diving a lot more into psychology. So I'm really excited to dive into this portion. I felt like this is where it's really going to start making more sense, all the information that I'm going over. Again, thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.